work. Elise, the lead artist on there, worked with us, just put so much love and so much detail into every single shot. And she was able to kind of create my memories in images. And that was really unique. Obviously, I've never done that before. So it was a collaborative process between me, myself, Imbal, Cecilia, the illustration team, the animation team. And so I think we worked together to make sure that it took people through this emotional process and it didn't subjugate real people in real time. And that was part of why we used animation. I actually saw it in Taylor Swift's documentary, Miss Americana, which is on Netflix. And I was like, wow, that's really impressive. And that really evoked a lot of emotion. And I'm not, a big anime person, but I saw the value of that. And so we reached out to that team.
Can you just describe a little bit the logistics of that? Are you in a meeting?
Well, it was during COVID. So we did everything remotely.
So you're on a Zoom call, and are you kind of what it feels like to me is the animators taking notes on you in some sort of hypnotic trance, as you're positioning yourself in space and remembering various aspects. Is that kind of how it went?
Yes. And then they would watch the footage. They would talk to us about those moments that they were going to be illustrating. And then we would go back and forth between slides, color palettes, imagery, and then figuring out what worked in the cut. So, and that was done all over Zoom because it was during the time that we were in a pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, it was it was reminiscent. I don't know much about the animation world, but it was reminiscent of some of the images that I remember from ages ago from the Linklater film Waking Life, where the subjects are recounting memories, and there's a realism to what they're offering, but they're also communicating with another world, but also a future world, hoping for something different. Anyway, it was very, very, it was so good. It was so good how that was done. And also it's like the I don't know, the poison chalice of NXIVM as a cult subject is that the stories are incredibly evocative, and because they're so, or I would say provocative, and because they're so provocative, I think they can easily distract from both the emotional reality of what's happening to the members, and also the mechanisms, and that's where I think spending a lot of choosing not, for example, to use NXIVM archival footage to, unfold the narrative in
we did
Seduced.
That sparingly, because we had so much. And because, as you know, Keith was obsessed with recording everything that he did. Everything was documented. And so we had tons of footage that we had access to. And we really, really were very deliberate about what we chose.
And the thing about all of that footage is that it's really what he wanted to be seen. It's how he wanted to be framed himself. And he doesn't need any more of that.
No, exactly. And that was one of the things that I really appreciated about what the other filmmakers chose, was to not give him the platform that he would have wanted, and to really focus on survivors and on the whistleblowers and on the people who took it down, and also on educating people on the inner workings, and really not it be trauma porn for people. I hate being so crude, but I think a lot of series out there do a disservice to survivors. And part of why I'm so passionate about what I'm doing now in my work with Stars as a producer is I get to go out and find other survivors who want to share their stories in a safe place, and that want to have that respect and that kind of collaborative process that I got to do in Seduced. And so I feel really excited that I get to kind of go out there and find other opportunities for people to have that if they want it. Because I know it's not an easy path to go public, but it is a very specific decision that when you know, you know.
One thing that haunts me about Seduced, and The Vow does this a little bit too, are all of the shots of returning to the totally banal Albany suburb where NXIVM was headquartered. And I think one of NXIVM's really pernicious strengths was its ability to pass as a kind of, corporate, neoliberal, normie organization. And the feeling that I come away with is very uneasy in relation to those images, that such systematic abuse can hide in such plain sight. So I wanted to ask whether your experience with this has changed your general perceptions of the world.
Yes, it has. But I think for the better, actually, because I don't like to be someone who lives fearful every day, although there have been times where I have been very afraid and, suffered a lot of anxiety and panic and paranoia. And that's not my natural state. And so I think now I feel like I kind of have a little bit of a superpower because I've seen this world so clearly now and I'm able to identify it. I feel like I can see it quickly in the world. And it's not so much of a blind spot for me as it was before. I mean, granted, I still make plenty of mistakes, but it is something that I do feel very heightened and attuned to. And I actually feel safer because I can see it. Whereas before I was more vulnerable.
Is it possible to see too much of it?
Yes.
Because one of the things on this podcast that we study is we study conspiracies and conspiracy theories. And NXIVM was absolutely a conspiracy against its members. And it radiated out and hoodwinked others. I'm thinking of the Dalai Lama's office, for example. But its story could also serve as evidence for the kind of QAnon paranoia about the elites allegedly engaged in trafficking and demonic rituals. And so I'm wondering if there were conspiratorial stories about the outer world that circulated within NXIVM. And are you aware of former members who were drawn into the QAnon landscape after leaving?
That's a very good question. And to answer the first part, I do believe there is a line where it can be too much. And I think that can be dangerous to one's psyche because it takes you out of reality and kind of creates this paranoia and distrust that I think can be dangerous and do harm to people, as we've seen in the news. And there are many stories and tons of propaganda that were circulating within NXIVM, all coming from Keith, but obviously never directly, just through his henchmen. And they lasted for years. One of the biggest lies was that Keith was not a predator and that those women that came out against him were all liars and that it was all fake news and it was a big conspiracy against him because he was doing so much good. And I say it that way because I believed that at a certain point, and so did many others. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people believe this bullshit. And it was so strongly propagated within the community that we didn't even dispute it. Well, we were also advised to not read the news. So there was that too. And there was a lot of fake news. And I think culturally we can all relate to feeling swindled and kind of manipulated by the news and by information. And so I think it's a balance between investigating and being aware of what sources you're allowing into your mind, and also having boundaries for certain information because some of it is not healthy for you. And I know for myself, I don't go down the rabbit hole of Reddit on NXIVM. I just don't. I don't need to. I did a, ask me anything. And that was the most that I will ever do because it's not healthy for me to go and start Googling myself and Googling all the conspiracies about NXIVM. I don't need to do that. I was there. I already know. And the same could apply to most people. I think